It happened in front of everyone. The night the mansion lights glowed gold against the dark sky, Damon Hartman, one of Los Angeles' richest developers, did something no one believed a man could do to his own wife. He locked her outside their mansion for his mistress. Not by mistake, not in anger, but deliberately, to please her. Eleanor Hartman stood on the marble steps, still in her silver gown from the charity gala, as her husband's voice thundered from behind the door. "Security, lock the gates. She's not coming back in. Lila doesn't want her anywhere near us." The guards froze. Lila Monroe, his glamorous new mistress, leaned against the balcony, wineglass in hand, smiling. "Do it," she said softly. "If you love me, Damon, prove it." And he did. Right there, in front of their staff, their guests, and the flashing phones of neighbors, he locked his wife out of her own home just to please his mistress. The gate's iron latch clanged shut like a sentence passed. Laughter drifted from inside the mansion as Eleanor stood under the porch light, the woman who built the empire now standing outside its walls. But she didn't scream. She didn't beg. Her calm voice broke through the silence. "Be careful, Damon. You're locking out more than just your wife tonight." What no one knew was that the entire estate, the companies, the cars, even that mansion, were built from the $55 million gift Eleanor once gave him out of love. A gift with a hidden clause that would turn his cruelty into his ruin. The night he locked her out for his mistress, he also locked himself out of his fortune. Because sometimes a man's greatest punishment begins the moment he believes he's won. And when a husband locks his wife out for his mistress, what happens when the mansion itself belongs to her? This is the story of how a husband locked his wife outside their mansion for his mistress, unaware her $55 million gift would ruin him. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The night air outside the Hartman mansion shimmered with the kind of silence that follows betrayal. Crystal chandeliers burned inside while, on the driveway, Eleanor Hartman stood motionless. Silver gown catching the glow of the gate lights. Mascara streaking her cheeks like ink on marble. Through the tall glass doors, her husband, Damon Hartman, 38, tall, sharp-jawed, and intoxicated by his own arrogance, shouted, "I said lock the gates! She's not coming back inside! Do you hear me?" Lila Monroe, 30, the reason for tonight's cruelty, leaned against the banister of the grand staircase. A red silk gown hugged her curves. Her smile was soft and venomous. She swirled her wineglass lazily and whispered just loud enough, "If you love me, Damon, don't let her ruin our night." Damon turned to the head of security, Mr. Cruz, a graying man who had served the family for 8 years. "Do it," Damon snapped. "Lock the gates. My wife doesn't live here anymore." Mr. Cruz hesitated, eyes flicking toward Eleanor, who stood trembling but composed. "Sir, Mrs. Frere Hartman." "She's nothing," Damon barked, voice echoing through the marble hall. "She's been nothing for months." Inside, a small crowd lingered. Business associates and neighbors who had followed them home from the charity gala. Karen Lewis, the neighbor whose gossip ran faster than her conscience, clutched her phone, whispering, "Oh my God, he's really throwing her out." Beside her, Victor Kane, Damon's bored ally, chuckled under his breath. "About time," he muttered. "The man's got taste now." Lila smiled wider, stepping into the doorway. Maybe she can check into a motel, somewhere that matches her dress, cheap and desperate. Laughter rippled through the doorway. Mona the maid froze mid-step, torn between duty and pity. Anthony, the driver, looked down, jaw tight. Eleanor finally spoke, her tone steady enough to silence them all. "You're locking me out to please her, Damon? After everything I built with you?" Damon crossed his arms, relishing the moment. "Built with me? Sweetheart, you built nothing. You were decoration, an accessory that stopped matching the furniture." The guests gasped. One of them, Cheryl Hammond, the PR director, laughed nervously. "He's brutal," before realizing cameras were rolling. Eleanor's throat tightened, but she didn't cry. Her eyes glistened like glass ready to cut. She took one step closer to the gate, voice trembling yet clear. I sold my work to start your company, Damon. I gave you everything. And I turned it into something real, he spat, which is why you're outside and I'm in here, with someone who understands value. Lila looped her arm through his, resting her head against his chest. Poor thing. She still thinks love pays bills. Phones flashed. Someone giggled. The humiliation was now public property. Mr. Cruz finally obeyed, pressing the switch. The iron gates slid together with a grinding groan, the sound of a chapter ending. Eleanor whispered through the bars, Be careful, Damon. You're locking out more than just your wife tonight. Damon smirked. The only thing I locked out is dead weight. Lila raised her glass. To freedom. The guests clinked glasses. Laughter spilled into the night as the mansion lights dimmed. Eleanor remained still on the other side of the gate, framed by the glow of the driveway lamps. Her hand slipped into her clutch and brushed against a small silver keychain engraved H&H Foundation. Her eyes changed. Tears replaced by quiet fire. She looked back once more at the house that had become a cage of arrogance, then turned toward the waiting car. From behind her, Karen whispered to her husband, Did you record that? He nodded. Every second, the video uploads. The world will soon see the man who locked out his wife for his mistress. And for the first time that night, Eleanor smiled. Just slightly. The headlights of Eleanor's sedan carved a pale path through Beverly Hills' empty streets. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly the diamond of her wedding ring pressed a faint bruise into her skin. The laughter from the mansion still rang in her head. Loud, sharp, unforgettable. She didn't drive far. She couldn't. At the edge of the city, she pulled into a deserted overlook where the skyline glittered like mockery. The engine idled. Her breath fogged the window. Inside that quiet car, humiliation finally had space to breathe. She glanced at herself in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back looked older, smaller, almost ghost-like. Mascara streaks, trembling lips, glassy eyes that refused to break. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, barely audible, He locked me out. For her. The words felt foreign, like she was repeating someone else's nightmare. A notification pinged. Her phone lit up. Lydia Brooks, her longtime personal assistant and friend, calling. Eleanor hesitated, then answered, voice raw. Lydia, I'm fine. Lydia's worried tone poured through the speaker. No, you're not. It's all over social media. The video, the gate, everything. Do you want me to come get you? Eleanor's throat tightened. No, I just need air. Lydia wasn't only an assistant. She'd been with Eleanor since the early H&H Foundation days. Loyal, gentle, and protective. Tonight, her voice was the only sound that didn't hurt. Remember what your father used to say, Lydia murmured. Grace doesn't mean silence. It means timing. Eleanor exhaled shakily. He also said, always keep your paperwork clean. She hung up softly, as if sealing a promise to herself. The camera of narration lingers on the dashboard photo. Her father, Michael Avery Hartman, arm around her younger self at a construction site, blueprint in hand. His eyes seemed alive even in the faded picture. She remembered his words the day he gifted her that silver keychain, now glinting on her mirror. Protect what you build, Ellie. Give it freely, but write the truth down first. Her gaze dropped to the keychain, H&H Foundation, the symbol of the company she started with Damon, the seed of his empire, and of her future vengeance. Tears welled again, but stopped midway. Something else surfaced. Not rage, not despair, but clarity. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and looked at herself once more in the mirror. The reflection no longer trembled. He thinks I'm out, she whispered, eyes narrowing. He has no idea I'm still inside. Everywhere that matters. Outside, dawn began hinting at the horizon, brushing pale light across her face. The first light since humiliation. She started the engine, phone buzzing again. A new message from Lydia. Do you still have Avery Clark's files? Eleanor's lips parted. Yes, and tonight, I'll read every line. The skyline shimmered like a promise waiting to be reclaimed. She drove off slowly, the camera lingering on the empty passenger seat where silence had finally become her ally. A thin folder labeled Avery Trust Documents slides from the glove compartment as the car moves. Its golden seal catches the sunrise, the first glint of the $55 million truth that will destroy Damon. The golden seal of the folder shimmered as Eleanor parked outside a quiet diner on the city's edge. She opened it slowly, the smell of paper and memory spilling out. One document slipped free, a signed letter bearing Avery Clark's name. The sight of it pulled her back 5 years earlier, to the day everything began. 5 years earlier, back then, Eleanor wasn't a woman locked out of a mansion. She was a financial analyst with brilliance sharp enough to cut through corporate lies. She worked for Avery Clark, her father's oldest friend, a calm, dignified man with silver hair and soft eyes that hid wisdom beneath gentleness. "Ellie," he'd said one afternoon, handing her a folder, "your father built blueprints. You build numbers. You'll do more than both of us combined. Just remember, love should never erase logic." That same week, Damon Hartman walked into her life, charming, magnetic, and reckless in the way that made confidence look like destiny. He was a struggling developer, pitching dreams bigger than his wallet. Eleanor had laughed that night over coffee. "You talk like the world already belongs to you." He'd grinned. "It will, if I have you." Love bloomed fast. Too fast. Avery had watched quietly at their engagement dinner, warning gently, "Every man looks honest when love lights the room. Just keep the contracts as clear as your heart." Eleanor smiled. "He's not after anything, Avery. We're building this together." When they married, she sold her late father's design patent, worth millions, and added it to Damon's first project. Avery, proud yet cautious, transferred $55 million into a new joint venture, H&H Foundation, a wedding gift registered under her name with a protective clause. "If Damon ever drives you out," Avery explained softly, signing the clause before her eyes, "this gift reverts to you. Don't ever forget what's written here." She nodded, believing she'd never need it. The flashback shifted. Wedding laughter, champagne glasses, blueprints scattered over the kitchen counter. Damon's hand over hers, promising eternity. Then months later, that same hand shoving papers at her, voice cold. "Just sign, Ellie. Routine transfer." Avery had died by then. No one else to warn her. She signed, thinking it was bookkeeping. It was actually the document that gave Damon operational control of everything she built. The montage quickened. Late nights alone, canceled anniversaries, new women's perfume in his car, pitying stares from staff. Then one image froze. Damon laughing with Lila Monroe, a rising interior designer he hired to renovate the mansion. Lila's hand brushed his arm, lingering too long. Eleanor remembered the way Damon introduced her that day. "Lila has vision, Ellie. Try to learn something from her." It was the first visible crack, the moment the empire she built began rotting from within. Writing assistant software. Eleanor blinked back to the present, tears rolling silently down her cheek as the diner's neon flickered outside her car. She whispered to the folder, "I kept every word, Avery. Every word." Her hand closed the file with new steadiness. The same way a general holsters a weapon. Her phone buzzes again. Lydia's message glows. "If the clause still stands, you can take everything back." Eleanor's eyes lifted to the windshield, catching her own reflection. This time not broken, but calculating. The war had just begun. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel. You're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from, and what part of this story spoke to your heart? The morning sun touched the mansion's glass walls, but inside warmth had already left the air. Eleanor stood by the dining table, arranging the breakfast Damon once claimed he couldn't start his day without. French toast, black coffee, and silence. He entered, crisp suit, phone pressed to his ear, face already hard from battle. Damon Hartman had grown into the kind of man who carried power like perfume. Sharp, intoxicating, and impossible to ignore. He didn't look at her when he spoke. Cancel the charity brunch. You don't need to sit at those tables pretending to matter. Eleanor froze mid-motion. It's the foundation you named after my father. Correction, he cut in, setting his briefcase on the table. I fund it. You smile beside the check. His assistant Cheryl Hammond, a tall woman with practiced indifference and a glassy laugh, stepped into the room holding a tablet. Sir, the press interview has been moved to 11. They'll want shots of the new project with Ms. Monroe. Eleanor turned. Ms. Monroe. Lila Monroe, 30, breezed in wearing white silk, pretending not to notice the tension. Her perfume filled the air like a declaration. Good morning, she said sweetly, taking the seat across from Damon. Eleanor's seat. Don't worry, Lila added, smirking. I'll keep your husband on schedule. Eleanor's fork clattered softly against the plate. You're his interior designer, that's all. Damon's eyes flicked up. Don't talk to her like that. The room fell silent except for the steady tick of the clock. Damon adjusted his cufflinks and smiled at Lila, the smile he once reserved for Eleanor. Victor Kane, one of Damon's board allies, walked in from the patio, sunglasses on, phone in hand. The investors loved the rebrand, Damon. Cutting the emotional baggage was smart. He looked at Eleanor and grinned. No offense. Lila laughed quietly. None taken, I'm sure. Eleanor swallowed hard, forcing her tone to stay even. You're building an empire on arrogance. Damon rose from his seat, towering over her. And on your silence. Remember that. The guests, Cheryl, Victor, and Gordon Wells, Damon's lawyer, exchanged glances. Cheryl chuckled awkwardly. Come on, Damon, you'll be late. He leaned closer to Eleanor's ear, his voice low, cruel. You should be grateful I kept you around this long. Then he turned to Lila, taking her hand openly in front of everyone. Ready, darling? Lila looked back at Eleanor, eyes glinting with mock pity. Don't wait up. We'll be late for the interview about the future. They left together, laughter echoing down the marble corridor. Eleanor stood alone in the silence they left behind. Mona, the maid who had watched everything, hesitated before whispering, Ma'am, are you okay? Eleanor's lips trembled, then steadied. I'm fine, Mona. Just learning how rot begins. She turned toward the glass door, where Damon's car disappeared down the driveway. Her reflection stared back, fragile, but still unbroken. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Lydia. Avery's old lawyer reached out. He says you should read page 6 of the clause. Eleanor's eyes lifted from the screen, the first glimmer of realization beginning to dawn. The Riverside Hotel ballroom glimmered beneath chandeliers that reflected wealth like mirrors of deceit. Guests floated in laughter, music, and champagne. The annual Hartman Foundation Charity Gala, once Eleanor's pride. Tonight she attended only because Damon insisted she play the part one last time. She arrived in a pale silver gown, soft curls pinned neatly, her face carrying the quiet grace that once made photographers adore her. When she entered, the crowd paused. Some whispered, others smiled with pity. She felt their eyes, but kept walking. Every step calm, controlled. At the far end of the ballroom, Damon Hartman, dashing in a black tuxedo, stood surrounded by allies. Victor Kane, Cheryl Hammond, Gordon Wells, and investors. Their laughter filled the air. Beside him stood Lila Monroe, glowing in crimson satin, her hand looped around his arm as though she already belonged there. Eleanor approached slowly. Lydia Brooks, standing discreetly by the bar as silent support, watched nervously. Darling, Damon said loud enough for the room to hear. You actually came. Lila smirked, taking his wineglass. I told you she would. She loves attention. Murmurs rippled. Karen Lewis, the neighbor, whispered to a friend. She still thinks she's the lady of the house. Eleanor kept her tone calm. It's a charity event, Damon. It's about the children's homes. Not you. Damon chuckled, raising his glass toward the crowd. You hear that? My wife thinks I'm not the center of attention. Let's fix that. The crowd laughed politely. Lila leaned closer, voice honeyed. Maybe she's just jealous. The laughter turned cruel. Damon's voice sharpened. Jealous? She should be. Lila understands my vision, not pity projects and emotional speeches. Eleanor blinked, the words cutting deeper than any slap. Still, she stood tall. Be careful, Damon. You're crossing decency. He waved her off like an inconvenience. Decency doesn't pay for penthouses, sweetheart. Then, he snapped his fingers at a waiter. Bring her a drink. She looks thirsty. The waiter hesitated, unsure. Damon smirked, lifted his own glass, and deliberately poured red wine across Eleanor's silver gown. Gasps filled the ballroom. Cameras flashed. Lila covered her lips in feigned shock, whispering, "Oh no, accidents happen." Eleanor didn't move. The crimson stain spread slowly, bleeding through silk like insult made visible. Cheryl Hammond murmured, "Good publicity, though," before catching Lydia's glare. Eleanor's voice came low and even, trembling with suppressed fury. "You just turned your empire into a circus, Damon. Be sure the tickets sell." She set the empty glass on a passing tray, turned toward the crowd, and walked away without another word. The silence that followed was louder than the laughter before it. Lydia hurried after her, whispering, "Let's go, before this becomes worse." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "No, Lydia. Let them record. I want the world to remember this night." As she exits through the ballroom doors, Victor Kane mutters, "He's playing with fire." Lila laughs softly. "Then let's see how hot it burns." The night outside the hotel window looked like broken glass, fragments of light scattered across downtown Los Angeles. Eleanor sat at the edge of a small bed inside a modest suite at the Regency Inn, the cheapest hotel she could find that didn't ask questions. Her silver gown, still stained with wine, hung over the chair like a ghost. Her phone vibrated again. Another notification, another video clip. The entire internet had seen Damon's cruelty now. Every headline screamed humiliation. Billionaire pours wine on wife at charity gala. Power couple implodes in public. She stared blankly at the screen, then turned it face down. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. A soft knock came at the door. It was Lydia Brooks, her loyal assistant and quiet guardian, a woman in her early 30s with warm eyes and a protective calm that Eleanor had come to rely on. Lydia entered holding a small paper bag and a thermos. "Chamomile tea. You always breathe better after the second sip." Eleanor tried to smile, failed, and whispered, "Thank you." Lydia sat across from her. "The internet's brutal, but they'll move on. He'll move on too. Right into a headline that burns." Eleanor looked up slowly. "He won't just move on. He'll rebuild his lies with her, and they'll call it love." Lydia frowned, hesitant. "Then maybe it's time you remind the world who really built that empire." Eleanor blinked. "What are you saying?" Lydia reached into her bag and pulled out a neatly folded envelope. "Avery Clark's old lawyer sent this to your office weeks ago. I didn't show you. You were already breaking. But now," she placed it gently on the bed, "it's about the H&H Foundation. He said you should read page 6. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she unfolded the papers. The legal print danced before her eyes until one line came into focus. In the event that Eleanor Hartman is forcibly removed from the marital estate by the spouse, all assets and subsidiaries derived from the H&H Foundation revert to her sole ownership. Her breath hitched. "Removed from the marital estate," she read aloud. Lydia leaned forward, whispering, "He locked you out, Eleanor. You didn't just lose a home. You triggered a clause." Eleanor looked at her reflection in the mirror opposite the bed. Swollen eyes, trembling lip, but something new behind them. Realization. "He thought he was locking me out," she said quietly, "but he just handed me everything." Lydia exhaled, half smiling through tears. "Then we start now." Eleanor nodded. "Tonight." She gathered the papers, aligning each with precision, the gesture of someone rebuilding control. She switched off her phone and whispered, "This silence will be his undoing." The camera lingers as she turns toward the window. The city lights reflect against the glass, a quiet storm brewing behind calm eyes. Outside, thunder rolls faintly over the skyline. In her mirror's reflection, Eleanor's face hardens. Not broken anymore, but preparing. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds of the small hotel room, painting faint gold stripes across the scattered legal papers. Eleanor hadn't slept. The tea Lydia brought was cold, the cup untouched. She sat at the desk, rereading the clause for the 10th time, whispering each word as if carving them into stone. If she is removed from the marital estate, her lips curved slightly, then it's mine again. A knock at the door startled her. Lydia's voice followed, calm but urgent. They're here. Eleanor straightened her shoulders and opened the door to 3 visitors who carried the air of quiet competence. Robert Kane, Tessa Grant, and Dr. Howard Ellis. Robert Kane, late 50s, wore a gray suit that had seen too many courtrooms. He was Avery Clark's former attorney, sharp-eyed and deliberate in speech. Mrs. Hartman, he greeted, bowing slightly. Avery predicted a day like this. He left instructions. Beside him stood Tessa Grant, early 40s, a forensic accountant known for unearthing what men hide behind numbers. Her tone was brisk. I've already reviewed H&H's holdings. Nearly every asset is tied to the original foundation. If the clause holds, Damon's entire empire collapses the moment we file activation. The third, Dr. Howard Ellis, mid-60s, family friend and therapist, carried warmth rather than paperwork. His eyes studied Eleanor's exhaustion. You haven't eaten. Revenge runs faster than healing, but it's harder to stop. Eleanor smiled faintly. This isn't revenge, it's balance. Robert unfolded a small packet sealed in wax, Avery Clark's handwriting across the top. He called this the Integrity Protocol. He wanted you to have it if Damon ever forgot gratitude. Eleanor took the packet carefully, her hands trembling. Inside lay instructions. How to activate the reversion clause, how to reclaim accounts, and most importantly, how to do it quietly. Tessa tapped her laptop, projecting financial charts onto the small hotel TV. See this? Every transaction routes through H&H's shell accounts. Once we file, they freeze automatically. Damon won't even be able to buy coffee. Lydia let out a low whistle. He'll feel what hunger tastes like. Dr. Ellis crossed his arms. And you? What will you feel when it's done? Eleanor met his gaze. Relief, then purpose. For a moment silence held. Not the kind that breaks, but the kind that builds. Robert adjusted his glasses. We'll need your signature to begin. Are you ready, Mrs. Hartman? Eleanor inhaled deeply, eyes fixed on the light creeping across the documents. He locked me out to please his mistress. Let's see how pleased she is when the locks change everywhere else. She signed slowly, pen steady, each stroke deliberate. Sunlight fully floods the room as Robert seals the envelope. The tone shifts. Despair transforms into control. Tessa's phone buzzes. She glances at the screen, frowning. Damon just transferred $2 million into Lila Monroe's personal account. Eleanor's eyes narrow. Then we move faster, before greed spends what doesn't belong to him. The camera lingers on the sealed envelope in Robert's hand, labeled Clause Activation. The silent weapon that will change everything. The marble floors of the Hartman mansion gleamed like mirrors, reflecting a party built on arrogance. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter bounced off the vaulted ceilings, and the man at the center of it all, Damon Hartman, basked in his own myth. He stood beside Lila Monroe, who shimmered in a golden gown, her laughter bright and hollow. Tonight's celebration wasn't on any calendar. It was a victory party for Damon's ego. He'd called it a fresh start. The servants called it a funeral for decency. Freedom tastes better with champagne, Lila said, leaning on his shoulder. To the end of the old life. Victor Kane, ever the opportunistic investor, lifted his glass. To the man who rebuilt himself without dead weight. The guests, mostly Damon's corporate circle, erupted in cheers. Cheryl Hammond, the PR director, smirked at her phone. The video of the gala humiliation hit 2 million views. You're trending, Damon. People love a villain. Damon laughed, unbothered. Publicity is still publicity. He slipped an arm around Lila. They can call me a monster as long as they spell my name right. At the corner of the room stood Gordon Wells, his attorney, always calculating. The foundation audit's pending, But with the assets restructured under your signature, you're untouchable. Lila twirled, her golden gown catching the chandelier's light. You hear that, Damon? Untouchable. Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Even the servants, Mona and Mr. Cruz, moved carefully, afraid to draw attention. When Mona accidentally brushed Damon's jacket while serving drinks, he snapped, "Watch it. This isn't your kitchen." Her eyes dropped. "Sorry, sir." Lila smirked, enjoying the scene. "Don't apologize, Mona. He's just tense. Being powerful is exhausting." Damon's grin returned instantly. "You understand me better than anyone ever did." Victor raised a brow. "Even more than the wife who funded half your empire?" The room stilled for a second. Lila's smile faltered, but only briefly. Damon's jaw tightened. "She didn't fund it. She followed me. I made her life worth something." Lila tilted her head. "Still, she looked strong, even when you humiliated her. I kind of admired that." He turned sharply, eyes cold. "Admire me instead. She's history." The conversation broke into nervous laughter, tension neatly buried under more champagne. But behind the laughter, small cracks began to form, invisible to him, glaring to everyone else. Cheryl whispered to Victor, "He's getting reckless. That arrogance costs money." Victor shrugged. "As long as it's not ours." Meanwhile, Damon's phone buzzed on the counter. A bank alert. High-risk flag. Multiple account holds pending review. He ignored it, thinking it was a system glitch. "Come on," he said loudly. "Let's toast to the future." They raised their glasses again. Lila's bracelet sparkled like a trophy. Damon's eyes gleamed with delusion. But Mona, clearing empty glasses near the doorway, noticed the phone screen flashing red again. Her whisper trembled as she looked toward Mr. Cruz. "Something's happening. The accounts, they're freezing." He shook his head. "Don't say a word, not tonight." The party roars with laughter, but the camera lingers on Damon's buzzing phone. Notifications piling up. Transfer declined. Asset hold initiated. Clause activation in progress. A storm was coming, and it was signed in his wife's hand. Rain clouds gathered above downtown Los Angeles, as if the sky itself was preparing to witness justice. Inside Hartman Enterprises headquarters, the atmosphere shifted from luxury to panic within minutes. Phones rang. Assistants whispered. Screens blinked red. Cheryl Hammond, Damon's PR director, burst into his office, tablets shaking in her hands. "Damon, the bank just froze 4 of our accounts, domestic and offshore. They said it's a legal hold." Damon looked up from his glass of scotch, irritated. "That's impossible. We're liquid across all divisions." Across the room, Victor Kane, his investor ally, scrolled through messages. "He's right, Cheryl. Probably a technical glitch." But Gordon Wells, his longtime attorney, frowned, voice tightening. "It's not a glitch. Look, court filings went public at 9:03 a.m. Reversion clause enforcement, section 14B. The color drained from Damon's face. "Clause? What clause?" Gordon hesitated, swallowing hard. "The one tied to the H&H Foundation. The one Avery Clark drafted years ago." For a moment, silence filled the office. Heavy, suffocating. Then Lila Monroe stormed in, clutching her phone. "Damon, what's happening? My account's locked. My card was declined buying jewelry." Her voice cracked between fear and anger. The staff nearby pretended not to look, but couldn't hide their smirks. Damon stood, pacing. "Someone's sabotaging us. Call the bank manager." Victor shook his head. "Already tried. They said the directive came from a court order." Cheryl whispered under her breath. "This is bad publicity, Damon. Headlines are spinning already." He turned on her instantly. "You think I care about headlines? I own this company." Gordon exhaled slowly, pulling a document from his briefcase. "Not anymore, you don't." He laid the paper on the table. "It says all assets revert to Eleanor Hartman under her sole ownership. Following removal from the marital estate by spouse action." Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. "Removed? Damon, you locked her out." He froze. The memory of that night, the gate slamming, the crowd laughing, flashed behind his eyes. "Impossible," he muttered. "She wouldn't dare. She's too weak." Gordon interrupted. "She didn't have to dare, Damon. She just had to sign, and she did. Suddenly, screens across the office flickered again. A breaking news banner scrolled across a muted television. H&H Foundation ownership restored to Eleanor Hartman. Court confirms legal transfer. Reporters outside the glass walls erupted in camera flashes. Employees stopped working, whispering. Even security hesitated, uncertain who to take orders from now. Lila's hand trembled as she whispered, "Tell me this isn't real." Damon's scotch glass shattered on the floor. "Find her," he hissed. "Find her now." But the sound that answered wasn't his wife's voice. It was Robert Kane's calm tone over the speakerphone. "Mr. Hartman, this is your formal notification. The clause has been activated. Effective immediately, Mrs. Eleanor Hartman controls all accounts, subsidiaries, and properties under H&H Holdings." The building lights flicker as power momentarily cuts. Silence swallowing the room. Outside, a swarm of journalists rushed the front door shouting, "Mr. Hartman, is it true your wife owns everything?" Inside, Damon grips the edge of his desk, breath ragged, while the echo of his own cruelty plays in his mind. She's nothing. Now nothing owned him. The white Bentley rolled to a stop before the same iron gates that once slammed in her face. But this time, they opened silently. Eleanor Hartman stepped out in a tailored cream suit, elegance without excess, power without noise. Behind her followed Robert Kane, the seasoned lawyer, Lydia Brooks, ever steady at her side, and Tessa Grant, tablet in hand, tracking every notification from the court system. Inside the mansion grounds, staff lined the walkway. Mona, the maid who had once looked away in shame, whispered, "Welcome home, Mrs. Hartman." Eleanor's voice was soft. "Thank you, Mona. It's still home because of people like you." At the doorway stood Mr. Cruz, the head of security who'd obeyed Damon's cruel order weeks before. His eyes lowered. "Ma'am, I never wanted to lock you out." Eleanor nodded once. "Then unlock what's right." He pressed a button. The front doors opened wide. From the grand staircase descended Damon Hartman himself, disheveled suit, fury in his eyes, denial in his posture. Beside him, Lila Monroe clutched her phone, frantic. "You can't just walk in here," Damon barked. "This is still my house." Robert handed him an envelope. "Court says otherwise. This property, along with all associated assets, reverted to Mrs. Hartman at 9:03 a.m. Lila's voice trembled. "Damon, what is he talking about?" Tessa glanced up from her screen. "Every card, every account, every car, frozen under your name. Her signatures restored ownership." The color drained from Damon's face. "You planned this," he hissed. "You set me up." Eleanor met his glare without blinking. "No, Damon. You set the terms when you threw me out to please your mistress." Lila stepped forward, anger rising. "Don't talk to him like that." Eleanor turned her calm gaze toward her. "Miss Monroe, you have 1 hour to collect your belongings. Security will escort you. Please use the side door. The front is for owners." The guests and staff nearby exchanged looks, half pity, half awe. Damon slammed a fist against the banister. "You think this makes you powerful? You can't run my empire." Eleanor's tone sharpened just slightly. "Correction. I can rebuild it, with honesty, and you can watch." Lydia stepped beside her, eyes fierce with loyalty. "Everything's ready for the press statement, Eleanor." Robert sealed the envelope again. "We'll need your authorization for the board tomorrow." Eleanor nodded, walking toward the glass wall that overlooked the city. Sunlight washed across her face. The same house that once mocked her now glowed like surrender. She turned back once more. "Damon, arrogance built your throne. Integrity will bury it." Lila dropped her glass. Damon stood frozen, the empire he stole now dissolving in daylight. Outside the gates, camera flashes ignite. Reporters shout, "Mrs. Hartman, how does it feel to own everything again?" Eleanor looks directly into the lens, silent, letting her calm become the answer. The elevator doors slid open to the top floor of Hartman Enterprises Tower, but this time the energy felt different, quieter, heavier, as if truth itself had entered the building. Eleanor Hartman stepped out in a silver-gray suit, her posture regal yet unthreatening. Behind her came Robert Kane, her father's former attorney, Tessa Grant, forensic accountant, and Lydia Brooks, calm but alert. Their presence turned the hallway into a silent tribunal. At the far end, Damon Hartman burst out of his office, red-eyed, voice sharp. Victor Kane, Cheryl Hammond, and Gordon Wells followed in jittery confusion, the walls of arrogance already cracking. "You can't just march in here," Damon barked. "Security—" Mr. Cruz, the head of security, appeared in the doorway. His tone was respectful but firm. "Sir, the order's signed. The building is under legal supervision until verification is complete." Damon blinked. "Legal supervision?" From behind Eleanor stepped Dr. Howard Ellis, her late father's trustee, holding a sealed file. "We discovered inconsistencies in the Foundation's financial records. Mrs. Hartman requested a forensic audit." Tessa tapped her tablet, projecting spreadsheets onto the boardroom screen. "We traced millions through shell companies. Companies registered under Damon Hartman's private trust. Forged authorizations, counterfeit invoices, all signed in your name, Mr. Hartman." The room froze. Gasps cut the silence like glass. Cheryl Hammond stammered, "You said those transfers were bonuses." Damon's voice cracked. "They were strategic investments." Robert interrupted, his calm voice slicing through Damon's panic. "They were embezzlements. From your wife's own foundation." The color drained from Damon's face. He turned to his allies, but one by one they looked away. Victor Kane whispered, "This could destroy us all." Gordon Wells dropped his pen. "I told you this was reckless." Eleanor finally spoke, her voice low but resonant. "I gave you trust, Damon. You gave me theft." He took a step forward. "You think you can humiliate me with numbers?" She met his eyes. "No. The truth already did." The doors opened suddenly. 2 federal auditors and an investigator, badges glinting. "Mr. Damon Hartman," one said, "we're here to serve an order of seizure. All company assets are frozen pending fraud investigation." Damon's shoulders stiffened, voice barely holding together. "This is my company," Robert responded evenly. "Not anymore. It's her name on the Foundation, and on every legal document you forged." The same boardroom that once echoed with Damon's authority now filled with silence so absolute, it bordered on holy. Eleanor turned toward the stunned employees gathered behind the glass. "This company will continue under integrity. Anyone who believes in that may stay. Anyone who doesn't, leave now." One by one, the staff began to clap softly. Not applause, but respect. Damon looked around, realizing every loyal face was gone. The lead investigator approached him quietly. "Mr. Hartman, we'll need you to come with us for questioning." Damon's lips parted. No words came out. Eleanor turned away, her voice calm as the storm outside gathered. "Truth was always the one thing you couldn't buy." The screen fades on Damon's stunned expression. The first shadow of handcuffs glinting in the light. The news spread like wildfire across Los Angeles. Billionaire Damon Hartman under investigation for fraud and forgery. By the time the afternoon sun reached the Hartman Tower courtyard, every major network had cameras aimed at its glass doors. Inside, the chaos had a sound. Papers slamming, phones ringing, footsteps running. Damon stood in the middle of it, disoriented, as the empire he once commanded folded in on itself. Victor Kane, his longtime investor, was the first to speak. "The SEC's already on the phone, Damon. They're tracing the offshore accounts. I can't be tied to this." He walked away without waiting for a reply. Cheryl Hammond, once his publicist, whispered sharply into her phone, "We're pulling every campaign. We'll issue a neutral statement. Don't use my name." Then she, too, vanished through the back exit. Damon's voice cracked. "Cowards! All of you!" Only Gordon Wells, his lawyer, remained. Face pale, tie loosened. "I told you this was fraud, Damon. They've got signatures, timestamps, everything." Before Damon could answer, the sound of heels echoed across the marble floor. Lila Monroe appeared, immaculate in her red dress, but her eyes darted with unease. "Damon, is it true? They froze my accounts. You said the money was safe." He reached for her. "We'll fix it. I just need a day." She pulled her arm away, shaking her head. "A day? Damon, I just got a call from Ethan West. The investor you mocked last year? He's offered me a position in his firm and protection." He froze. "You're leaving?" She gave a trembling laugh that carried more pity than love. "I didn't sign up for prison time, darling." Her perfume lingered as she turned and walked away, the same way she once entered, confident and glittering. Now she left as another chapter of his arrogance. Moments later, two investigators stepped forward. One male, one female, both composed. "Mr. Damon Hartman, you are under arrest for financial fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." The clicking of handcuffs echoed through the vast lobby. Cameras flashed wildly outside. He resisted, shouting, "You can't do this! This is my building!" But the investigators moved steadily. Behind them, Mr. Cruz, the security chief, stood silently, this time opening the doors for the law, not for Damon. Outside, reporters swarmed as he was led down the steps. "Mr. Hartman, did your wife know? Is it true you forged her foundation papers?" He looked up and saw Eleanor standing by her car across the street, composed in a white suit, hands clasped. The crowd parted between them. For a moment, the noise faded. He shouted desperately, "Eleanor, tell them I'm not the villain." She held his gaze and answered softly, "You locked me out for vanity. Now truth has locked you in." Tears blurred his eyes. His knees buckled slightly. The same ground he once made her walk away from now received his fall. The camera shutters caught him mid-kneel, head bowed, cuffs gleaming, humiliation in daylight. As he's escorted into the car, Eleanor's driver opens her door. She turns once more and says quietly, "Justice doesn't scream, it simply arrives." The door closes. The sirens fade. Damon's empire, pride, and illusion vanish with the sound. 3 weeks later, the same news channels that once ridiculed Eleanor Hartman now replayed her courtroom composure as a study in grace. Headlines filled every screen. "The woman who took back integrity." Eleanor Hartman, from locked out to leader. The world that once pitied her now watched her with awe. Inside the newly renovated Hartman Foundation headquarters, sunlight streamed through panoramic glass. Gone were the dark leather chairs and golden excess Damon adored, replaced with open spaces, green plants, and framed photos of women-led community projects. Eleanor moved through the corridor slowly, greeting staff by name. Lydia Brooks, her loyal aide, followed with a folder. "The media's still requesting interviews," Lydia said, "but you haven't responded to any." Eleanor smiled faintly. If they truly understand the story, they'll know silence speaks louder than words. In the main conference hall, Robert Kane, Tessa Grant, and Dr. Howard Ellis stood by the polished table. Each had been there from her rebirth, the guardians of her father's legacy and her new foundation. Tessa adjusted her glasses. "The federal audit's complete. Every stolen dollar is recovered and redirected to community relief programs under your foundation's name." Robert added, "The press is calling it poetic justice." Eleanor sat, fingers resting on the old fountain pen her father once used. "No, justice is just balance returning home." Dr. Ellis leaned forward, his tone warm but firm. "And balance only holds if the heart stays light. You've forgiven him, haven't you?" Eleanor's eyes softened. "Yes, forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It ends its power." A knock interrupted. Mona, the housemaid who once watched her humiliation in silence, stepped in nervously holding an envelope. "Mrs. Hartman, the staff wanted you to have this. It's from the community. They collected donations for the foundation's next project." Eleanor opened it, a handwritten letter and small checks, each signed by people whose lives her new charity had already touched. Her voice trembled slightly. This is what power should build." Outside the tall glass windows, reporters gathered peacefully, not hunting scandal this time, but celebrating rebirth. A journalist spoke to a live camera. "In a world obsessed with revenge, Eleanor Hartman chose redemption. Today she launches the Avery Renewal Initiative, homes, scholarships, and second chances funded by the empire that once tried to erase her." Applause erupted from the courtyard below as Eleanor stepped to the balcony. The crowd looked up. Survivors, workers, Even former staff who'd once stayed silent now clapping proudly. A gentle breeze lifted her hair, sunlight washing over her white suit, the opposite of the night she was thrown out. Eleanor looked down at them and whispered, "Grace lasts longer than vengeance." Behind her, Lydia smiled softly. "And you're living proof." As she turned back inside, a quiet voice from the hall said, "He's requested to see you." Eleanor paused. "Damon?" Lydia nodded slowly. "He's out on bail. He wants to apologize. In person." Eleanor's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "Then it's time for the final page." The sky blushed with orange and silver as the sun began to set over the Eleanor Hartman Foundation courtyard. Cameras stood at a distance, quiet. For once, there were no headlines, no shouting reporters, only wind and truth. Eleanor Hartman stood by the marble fountain, her reflection rippling on its surface. She wore a white dress, the same color she wore on the day she was thrown out, but now it symbolized peace, not pain. By her side, Lydia Brooks and Robert Kane stood silently, witnesses to the end of a storm. A black sedan stopped at the gate. Out stepped Damon Hartman, thinner now, eyes hollow, his confidence stripped bare. The man who once walked through rooms as if he owned the air now looked like someone learning to breathe again. Lydia whispered, "You don't owe him anything." Eleanor replied softly, "I owe myself closure." Damon stopped a few feet from her, trembling. "Eleanor," he said quietly, His voice broke. He tried again, his breath hitching. "I've replayed that night every day. The way I shouted, the way I locked you out just to please her. Every laugh, every cruel word. It all haunts me now." He took one step closer, tears clouding his vision. "You gave me trust, loyalty, peace, and I gave you humiliation. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I finally see the monster I became." Eleanor didn't move. Her silence was not cold, it was sacred. The sound of the fountain filled the space between them, soft and rhythmic. Then it happened. Damon's legs gave way. He fell to his knees on the same marble floor where he had once stood tall and proud. He clasped his hands together, tears streaking down his face, his voice trembling with desperation. "Please, Eleanor, forgive me. I destroyed everything beautiful in my life. You were my home, and I burned it down with my own pride." Gasps came from the few foundation workers nearby. Even Robert Kane looked away. The image was too raw, too human. Eleanor took a slow step forward. Her expression held sorrow, not anger. "Damon, the night you locked me out, I thought my life had ended. But it was the night it truly began. Pain was the door. Forgiveness is the key." He lowered his head completely, forehead touching the marble. A man bowing not to power, but to truth. "Please," he whispered, "say you forgive me." Her eyes shimmered, voice gentle but unyielding. "I forgive you, not for you, but for me, because hate is a chain I refuse to wear." He looked up, broken. "Can I ever come home?" Eleanor shook her head softly. "Home isn't a place, Damon. It's peace, and I already found mine." She turned away. The wind lifted her hair as sunlight touched her face. Behind her, Damon remained kneeling, surrounded by the empire he built and the silence he deserved. Eleanor's reflection in the fountain shimmered beside the kneeling figure. Light and shadow, forgiveness and consequence. Some men learn power from wealth. Others learn it when they kneel before grace.